In 1066, a formidable leader known as William the Conqueror crossed the English Channel and forever altered the course of history. From a disputed birthright in Normandy to the bloody Battle of Hastings, his audacious quest for the English crown reshaped an entire kingdom and laid the foundation for modern Britain. In today's episode on the Before Now channel, we're diving into the riveting tale of a conqueror whose ambition, strategy, and ruthless determination changed the world. If you like this video and others like it, please like and subscribe to the Before Now channel. Feel free to let us know which historical figure or event you'd like us to cover in the comment section below. William was born in the town of Falaise, Normandy, around 1027 or 1028. His father, Robert I, was the powerful Duke of Normandy, and his mother, Herlieva, was the daughter of Fulbert, a man rumored to be either a tanner or an embalmer. William's father, Robert I, became Duke of Normandy in 1027, under shadowy circumstances. His older brother, Richard III, had died suddenly, and whispers of foul play surrounded Robert's rise to power. Amidst this chaos, Robert managed to gather a group of loyal noblemen, including his uncle, the Archbishop of Rouen, and other influential figures who played significant roles in William's life. In 1034, Robert made a fateful decision to embark on a pilgrimage to Jerusalem. Despite his supporters' pleas to stay, he held a council in January 1035, where the Norman magnates swore loyalty to young William as his successor. Tragically, Robert never returned from his journey, dying in early July at Nicaea. With his father's death, William, still just a child, found himself thrust into the perilous role of Duke of Normandy, surrounded by ambitious nobles and threats from all sides. William's journey from a vulnerable young boy to the formidable William the Conqueror had begun. William's early years as Duke were fraught with challenges, from rebellion to the constant threat of assassination. Despite these hurdles, he asserted control with the help of loyal supporters and strategic alliances. One significant factor in William's favor was his marriage to Matilda of Flanders. Despite initial papal opposition, they married in the early 1050s. The union strengthened William's position, as Flanders was a powerful territory with connections to both the French royal house and the German emperors. The marriage produced several children, further strengthening his position, and by 1060, with his key rivals deceased, William's dominance in Normandy was solidified. In January 1066, Harold Godwinson was crowned King of England at Westminster Abbey amidst controversy. His claim to the throne was far from secure, with his brother Tostig, King Harald Hardrada of Norway, and William of Normandy all eyeing the crown. Tostig attacked England's southern coast in May, but found little support and retreated to Scotland. Meanwhile, William of Normandy gathered an army and fleet throughout the summer, anticipating an invasion. Harold also prepared by assembling forces along the English Channel. William of Poitiers is a council called by Duke William, where he reportedly debated with his nobles about invading England. William established control over his nobles, who supported the invasion for potential rewards. William also secured papal approval from Pope Alexander II and entrusted Normandy's governance to his wife during his absence. Throughout the summer, William amassed a substantial invasion fleet and army in Normandy. Delayed by adverse winds, William waited until late September to sail. Harold, having kept his forces on alert all summer, disbanded his army on September 8th for the harvest season. On September 25th, Harold defeated Tostig and Hardrada at the Battle of Stamford Bridge. Just 2 days later, William's fleet landed at Pevensey Bay, and he began his march inland. After his victory in the north, Harold quickly marched south to confront the Norman threat. He stopped in London before continuing to Hastings, where his forces took a defensive position on Senlac Hill. The Battle of Hastings began on October 14, 1066, and lasted all day. William's army, including cavalry and archers, initially struggled against Harold's shield wall. However, feigned retreats by the Normans lured English soldiers into vulnerable positions that broke their lines. Harold's death marked the decisive moment. Following the battle, William expected the English to surrender, but resistance persisted. William secured key locations and marched to Southwark, burning villages along the way. Crossing the Thames at Wallingford, he received submissions from the key English leaders. William entered London, constructed a castle, and was crowned King of England at Westminster Abbey on Christmas Day 1066, solidifying his conquest. After his coronation, William the Conqueror stayed in England to consolidate his rule. He aimed to reconcile with the native magnates, confirming the Earls Edwin of Mercia, Morcar of Northumbria, and Waltheof of Northampton in their lands and titles. Waltheof married William's niece, Judith, and a marriage between Edwin and one of William's daughters was proposed. Edgar the Atheling was also given lands, and ecclesiastical offices were retrained by the existing bishops, including the uncanonical Stigand. However, Harold's family and others who had fought at Hastings lost their lands. To fortify his rule in England, William initiated the construction of numerous castles, keeps, and moats, including the iconic White Tower at the Tower of London. These fortifications served as secure retreats during rebellions and protected garrisons deployed across the countryside. Initially built from earth and timber, these early structures were later upgraded to more formidable stone constructions. Initially, many Norman settlers maintained household knights without granting them their own fiefs. Over time, however, these knights began receiving land grants through a process known as subinfeudation. William also mandated that his newly appointed magnates contribute a fixed number of knights for military campaigns and to garrison the castles. This system marked a departure from the pre-conquest English practice, which organized military service based on territorial units like the Hyde. Resistance to William's rule persisted, with revolts led by figures like Edwin Morcar and Harold's sons. William's strategic castle building and swift military responses quelled these uprisings. The harrying of the North, a brutal campaign to subdue the North, exemplified his ruthless determination to maintain control. From 1070 to the mid-1080s, King William the Conqueror faced significant challenges both in England and on the continent, marked by Danish raids and internal rebellions. Sweyn of Denmark broke his promise to leave England in early 1070, launching raids along the Humber and East Anglia. Joined by local figures like Hereward the Wake, they sacked Peterborough Abbey before William negotiated Sweyn's departure, allowing him to refocus on mainland affairs. Meanwhile, trouble brewed in Normandy and Flanders. Count Baldwin VI's death in 1070 triggered a succession crisis, with his widow Richild contesting rule against Baldwin's brother Robert. The Battle of Cassel in 1071 further unsettled northern France and cost William an ally in Robert. Returning to England, William suppressed the northern rebellion led by Earl Edwin in 1071 and subdued the Isle of Ely, where rebels like Hereward the Wake were based. In 1072, William invaded Scotland, defeating Malcolm and securing peace through the Treaty of Abernethy. The revolt of the Earls in 1075 saw Ralph de Guile of Norfolk and Roger de Breteuil of Hereford attempt to overthrow William. While Ralph was besieged at Norwich Castle, Roger remained confined in Herefordshire. The rebellion fizzled as William returned to England and dealt with Danish threats and internal unrest, ensuring Norman control over England. William's strategic prowess was tested again in Brittany in 1076, where he was defeated by King Philip of France at the Battle of Dole. Despite setbacks, William managed to secure peace with Philip and Count Fulk of Anjou by late 1077. Personal and familial troubles also plagued William, including conflicts with his son Robert and the death of Queen Matilda in 1083. William's later years were marked by ongoing challenges in Maine and occasional unrest in England, although the threat of a Danish invasion in 1085 was quelled by King Canute IV's death. Throughout these tumultuous years, William's ability to maintain control over England and Normandy demonstrated his resilience and strategic acumen, solidifying his legacy as a formidable medieval ruler. Between 1082 and 1084, historical records offer little insight into William's activities, implying a period of relative calm. Historian David Bates suggests the silence indicates nothing notable occurred, especially as William spent most of this time on the continent, away from England, where events were chronicled in the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle. In 1082, William ordered the arrest of his half-brother Odo, though the exact reasons are unclear. Oderic Vitalis later claimed Odo aspired to become a pope, and tried to rally William's vassals for an invasion of southern Italy, challenging William's authority over his vassals. Odo remained imprisoned for the rest of William's reign, but his lands were not seized. In 1083, William faced further challenges when his son Robert rebelled again with support from the French king. The death of Queen Matilda on the 2nd of November 1083 compounded William's personal and political woes, given his deep attachment to her. William left England in late 1086 and upon returning to the continent arranged the marriage of his daughter Constance to Duke Alan of Brittany, strengthening his alliances against the French kings. In July 1087, while besieging Mantes, William was injured by his saddle's pommel and he fell ill. He died on the 9th of September 1087 at the priory of Saint-Gervais in Rouen. The remarkable reign of the Sun King, Louis XIV, was and still remains unmatched in history as the longest of any monarchy. His reign spanned 72 years in which he ruled France with absolute authority, leading the nation into some of its most glorious years. However, his ambition for greatness at any cost soon became his undoing, leaving him a villain to his people. From his rise to power to his demise, and even the curious tale of the eating of his heart, we unravel the captivating events that define the legacy of Louis XIV. Louis XIV was born on September 5, 1638, in the Château de Saint-Germain-en-Laye to King Louis XIII and Queen Anne of Austria. After 23 years of marriage and 4 heartbreaking stillbirths, his parents finally welcomed him into the world. Named Louis Dieu donné, meaning Louis the God-given, his birth was seen as a miracle and a divine gift, earning him the title of Dauphin, the traditional title for French heirs. Louis had an unusually close and affectionate relationship with his mother, Queen Anne. She devoted all her time to him, and their bond was evident to everyone around them. They shared a love for food and theater, passions that Louis likely inherited from their time spent together. This close relationship with his mother played a significant role in shaping his interests and character. It was his mother who gave Louis his belief in the absolute and divine power of his monarchical rule, which later defined his reign. Sensing his death was near in the spring of 1643, King Louis XIII made preparations for his 4-year-old son, Louis XIV. Distrusting his Spanish wife, Queen Anne, to govern alone, he decreed that a regency council with Anne at its head would rule on his son's behalf. Louis XIII passed away on May 14, 1643. Just days later, on May 18th, Queen Anne had his will annulled by the Parlement de Paris, a powerful judicial body of nobles and clergy. She then became the sole regent of France. Wasting no time, she exiled her late husband's ministers and appointed the Count of Brienne as the new Minister of Foreign Affairs. Anne took charge of religious policy until her son came of age in 1661. Anne appointed Cardinal Mazarin as chief minister, entrusting him with daily administration. She continued the policies of her late husband and Cardinal Richelieu to secure absolute authority in France and achieve victory abroad for her son. Anne demonstrated her loyalty to France by keeping Chancellor Pierre Séguier in his post. Even though he had interrogated her harshly years earlier, she prioritized the interests of France and her son over her personal grievances. As the 30 Years' War came to a close, France faced a new turmoil with the eruption of a civil war called the Fronde. This internal conflict hindered France's ability to capitalize on the Peace of Westphalia. Queen Anne and Cardinal Mazarin, following Cardinal Richelieu's policies, worked to strengthen the crown's power at the expense of the nobility and the parliaments. Anne, fiercely devoted to the divine rights of the King of France, took bold actions to reinforce royal authority, even imprisoning opponents like Pierre Broussel. The Frondeurs, descendants of the feudal aristocracy, opposed the centralizing royal government and resented the newly ennobled bureaucrats gaining influence. These tumultuous events left a lasting impression on young Louis XIV. Witnessing the chaos of the Fronde, he developed a deep distrust of Paris and the higher aristocracy. His childhood was abruptly ended by the political and military turmoil, thrusting him into adult responsibilities. Queen Anne played a crucial role in quelling the Fronde. She aimed to transfer absolute authority to her son and refused to negotiate with the rebellious princes. Many believe that Mazarin, closely allied with Anne, might have secretly married her, practically becoming Louis XIV's stepfather. As Louis came of age and was crowned, the Frondeurs lost their pretext for revolt. The rebellion gradually lost momentum and ended in 1653, when Mazarin returned triumphantly from exile. Mazarin then took charge of foreign and financial policy, with Anne no longer serving as regent. During this period, young Louis fell in love with Mazarin's niece, Marie Mancini. However, Anne and Mazarin ended the romance, sending Mancini away to marry in Italy. Anne was determined to marry her son to Philip IV of Spain's daughter, strengthening dynastic and political ties. Mazarin supported this plan, knowing his power and foreign policy relied on peace with Spain and the Spanish marriage. Despite Louis's tears and pleas, Anne remained steadfast. The marriage to the Spanish princess would be pivotal in ending the war between France and Spain. It also laid the foundation for the future claims and objectives of Louis's foreign policy, and eventually secured the Spanish throne for the House of Bourbon. Louis XIV was declared to have reached the age of maturity on September 7, 1651, when Cardinal Mazarin died in March 1661. Louis stunned his court by announcing he would rule without a chief minister. Up to this moment, I have been pleased to entrust the government of my affairs to the late cardinal. It is now time that I govern them myself, he declared. Louis ordered his secretaries and ministers to seal no orders except by his command, and to account to him personally each day. Seizing on the public's desire for peace and order after years of strife, Louis began consolidating central political authority, often at the expense of the feudal aristocracy. Historian Chateaubriand praised Louis for his ability to choose and encourage talented men, noting that the voice of genius of all kinds sounds from the tomb of Louis. Louis started his reign with administrative and financial reforms. In 1661, the treasury was nearly bankrupt. Louis appointed Jean-Baptiste Colbert as Comptroller General of Finance in 1665. However, he firstly had to deal with Nicolas Fouquet, the superintendent of finances. Fouquet's ambition worried Louis, especially after he flaunted his wealth at the opulent chateau of Vaux-le-Vicomte, indicating possible embezzlement of government funds. Fouquet's ambitions and his purchases of the fortified island of Belle-Île sealed his fate. He was charged with embezzlement, found guilty, and sentenced to exile. Louis changed the sentence to life imprisonment, allowing Colbert to reduce the national debt through more efficient taxation. Colbert implemented several financial reforms. He reduced the taille, land tax, and auction tax collection contracts. Financial officials were required to keep regular accounts, revising inventories, and removing unauthorized exemptions. By 1666, Colbert had turned a deficit into a surplus, with interest on the debt decreasing significantly. Revenue from indirect taxation also improved dramatically. Money was essential for Louis's reorganized and enlarged army, the splendor of Versailles, and the growing civil administration. The French tax system was costly and inefficient, with the burden falling mainly on the peasants. Over time, Louis, influenced by his secret wife, Madame de Maintenon, began taxing the nobility. Though this step toward fiscal equality was often undermined by concessions and exemptions won by the nobles. Louis and Colbert also sought to grow French commerce and trade. Colbert's mercantilist policies established new industries and encouraged manufacturers and inventors. He invited skilled artisans from across Europe to France, aiming to increase French exports and reduce imports. Military reforms were also a priority. Michel Le Tellier and his son François Michel Le Tellier helped curb the independent spirit of the nobility, imposing order in the court and the army. They modernized the army, transforming it into a professional, disciplined, well-trained force. He cared deeply for the soldiers' well-being and morale, ensuring the French military became a formidable force. In the early 1680s, Louis XIV had significantly expanded French influence worldwide. At home, he strengthened the crown's power over the church and the aristocracy, solidifying absolute monarchy in France. Initially supporting traditional Gallicanism, which curbed papal authority in France, Louis called an assembly of the French clergy in November 1681. During this assembly, the Declaration of the Clergy of France was accepted, bolstering royal authority over papal power. Bishops couldn't leave France without royal approval. Appeals couldn't be made to the Pope without consent, and government officials were protected from papal excommunication for their duties. Although Louis couldn't create ecclesiastical law, papal regulations lacked validity without royal assent, leading to the Pope's rejection of the declaration. To tighten control over the French aristocracy, Louis drew nobles to his court at Versailles. The Palace of Versailles was a hub of marriage arrangements, job placements, and aristocratic entertainment, featuring top-tier theater, opera, music, and hunting. To enjoy privileges and pensions, nobles had to remain in constant attendance at Louis's court. Louis also utilized censorship and lavish distractions to keep the nobility under his watchful eye. He scrutinized their opinions through open letters, entertained them with luxury and distractions, and prevented them from amassing private armies or plotting against royal authority from their estates. He transformed military aristocrats into ceremonial courtiers and elevated commoners to key administrative positions, and in doing so, diminished the power of old-line nobility, which he saw as a potential rebellion based on his experiences during the Fronde. This strategy, rooted in Louis's desire for centralized authority and peace, contributed to the end of major civil conflicts in France until the era of the French Revolution, about a century later. Louis XIV and Marie Theresa of Spain were joined in matrimony in 1660, welcoming 6 children into their royal fold. Unfortunately, only their eldest child, Louis le Grand Dauphin, survived into adulthood, earning the nickname Monseigneur. Maria Theresa's passing in 1683 prompted Louis to reflect that she never had caused him distress at any other time. While there were signs of affection early in their union, Louis was not faithful to Maria Theresa. He engaged in relationships with several mistresses, both publicly acknowledged and kept private. Notable among these mistresses were Louise de la Vallière, with whom he had 5 children between 1661 and 1667. And Marquise de Montespan, with whom he had 7 children from 1667 to 1680. Despite these affairs, Louis exhibited a stronger fidelity to his second wife, Françoise d'Aubigné, Marquise de Maintenon. Their relationship began when she cared for his children from his liaison with Madame de Montespan, particularly showing kindness to his favored son, Louis Auguste, Duke of Maine. After legitimizing his children from Madame de Montespan in 1673, Françoise d'Aubigné became the royal governess at Saint-Germain. This position allowed her rare access to Louis, speaking to him as an equal without restrictions. It's widely believed that they were secretly wed at Versailles around October 1683 or January 1684, a union known to few but acknowledged by many, enduring until Louis's passing. Despite Louis XIV's outward appearance as a robust and strong monarch, reports suggest that his health was far from perfect. He grappled with various ailments throughout his life, including signs of diabetes such as periositis and dental abscesses. His health reports, meticulously recorded from 1647 to 1711 by the king's chief physicians, detailed a laundry list of issues like recurring boils, fainting gout, dizziness, hot flashes, and headaches. One notable event in his health history was an operation for an anal fistula in 1686. This surgery, carried out by the surgeon Charles Félix de Tassay, was excruciatingly painful and required a specially designed scalpel. It took over 2 months for the wound to heal, showcasing the severity of Louis's health challenges. Louis XIV passed away on September 1st, 1715, just 4 days before his 77th birthday, after an incredible 72-year reign. His final days were marked by considerable pain, but according to reports, he peacefully passed away while reciting a psalm. His body was laid to rest in Saint-Denis Basilica. where it remained undisturbed for many years until the upheaval of the French Revolution led to the destruction of all remains found in the basilica. According to Philippe de Courcillon's journal, Louis on his deathbed advised his heirs with these words: "Do not follow the bad example which I have set for you. I have often undertaken war too lightly and have sustained it for vanity. Do not imitate me, but be a peaceful prince, and may you apply yourself principally to the alleviation of the burdens of your subjects." Interestingly, a piece of Louis XIV's mummified heart, preserved in a silver locket, made its way to Newnham House and was later shown to the Dean of Westminster, who reportedly consumed it. This strange occurrence adds a macabre footnote to the tale of the Sun King's final resting place. The French Revolution, which began in 1789, was a watershed event in world history, marking the end of absolute monarchy, the rise of secularism, and the birth of modern democratic intents. It was a period of radical social and political upheaval in France that saw the overthrow of the Bourbon monarchy, the establishment of a republic, and the eventual rise of Napoleon Bonaparte. Central to the revolution's dramatic and often tumultuous progression was Maximilien Robespierre, a key figure whose influence shaped the course of the revolution. He passionately fought against the French monarchy, the death penalty, and slavery, while advocating for democratic reforms and greater power for the people. Known for his dedication to the poor, Robespierre earned the nickname the Incorruptible because of his steadfast moral values and determination. However, his role in the Reign of Terror, a period marked by mass executions and political purges, has rendered him a controversial figure, embodying both the revolutionary zeal and the extreme measures taken to preserve the revolution. How did Maximilien Robespierre, a servant of the people who rose from humble beginnings and became loved and admired by all, fall from grace, etching his name in the annals of history as one of the most controversial figures of the French Revolution, eliciting both love and hate at the same time? Maximilien de Robespierre was born on May 6, 1758 in Arras, France. His father, François Maximilien Barthélemy de Robespierre, was a lawyer, and his mother, Jacqueline Marguerite Carrot, was the daughter of a brewer. Maximilien was the eldest of 4 children, with siblings Charlotte, Henriette, and Augustin. His mother tragically died in 1764 after giving birth to a stillborn daughter, an event that profoundly affected young Robespierre. After his mother's death, his father left the family, and Maximilien, along with his siblings, was raised by their maternal grandparents. Robespierre demonstrated a keen intellect early on, starting his education at the Collège of Arras at just 8 years old. In 1769, thanks to a recommendation from Bishop Louis Hilliard de Conzié, he earned a scholarship to the prestigious Collège Louis le Grand in Paris, or Paris. There, he befriended future revolutionary figures like Camille Desmoulins and Stanislas Fréron. Robespierre excelled in his studies, particularly admiring the Roman Republic and mastering the rhetoric of Cicero, Cato, and Lucius Junius Brutus. In 1776, he won the first prize for rhetoric. Robespierre's fascination with classical ideals and the works of Jean-Jacques Rousseau deeply influenced his political beliefs. He admired Rousseau's concept of the citizen soldier and embraced the idea that the general will of all the people was the foundation of political legitimacy. Robespierre's vision of revolutionary virtue and his advocacy for direct democracy were shaped by the philosophies of Montesquieu and Mably. Though some stories claim he met Rousseau before his death, this remains a matter of debate. Robespierre's commitment to these ideals would later drive his actions during the French Revolution, making him one of its most iconic and controversial leaders. Maximilien Robespierre started his education at the College of the Oratorians in Arras in 1765. He later won a scholarship to the prestigious Collège Louis le Grand in Paris in 1769. There he excelled in philosophy and law, graduating in 1780 with high honors and receiving a special prize for his academic achievements and conduct. After earning his law degree, Robespierre became a lawyer in Arras, setting up a household with his sister Charlotte. He quickly gained a reputation for his legal prowess and was appointed as a judge in the local criminal court in 1782. However, he resigned from this position due to his ethical opposition to the death penalty. Robespierre's intellectual pursuits earned him a place in the Literary Academy of Arras in 1783, where he later became chancellor and president. He was recognized for his essay on collective punishment, winning a medal from the Academy of Metz. His writings and speeches often address social injustices, such as the inequality faced by illegitimate children and the use of arbitrary imprisonment. Robespierre's social circle included influential figures like lawyer Marshal Herman, officer Lazare Carnot, and teacher Joseph Fouché. A secretary of the Academy of Arras, he connected with François-Noël Babeuf, a revolutionary land surveyor. These relationships would later prove significant in his political career. In August 1788, King Louis XVI called for new elections and summoned the Estates General to address France's financial crisis. Robespierre advocated for reform and was elected as one of 16 deputies representing French Flanders. He quickly made his mark with his first speech in June 1789, criticizing the hierarchical structure of the church and aligning with deputies who declared themselves the National Assembly. During the early stages of the revolution, Robespierre supported radical changes, including the storming of the Bastille and the establishment of the National Guard. He opposed property requirements for voting and holding office, drawing support from marginalized groups such as the Protestants, the Jews, and individuals of African descent. Despite his progressive views, Robespierre maintained a meticulous and traditional appearance. As a frequent orator in the Assembly, he championed the ideals of the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen and the Constitution of 1791. Although his views often did not win majority support, his dedication to democratic principles made him a key figure in the French Revolution. Despite his nervous and sometimes suspicious demeanor, as noted by contemporaries, Robespierre remained steadfast in his revolutionary ideals, influencing the course of French history. The full kickoff of the French Revolution can be traced back to significant events in October 1789. On October 5th, a massive march, predominantly composed of women, took place at Versailles. These women were protesting the high cost and scarcity of bread. They stormed the palace, demanding action from King Louis XVI. This forced the king and the National Constituent Assembly to relocate from Versailles to Paris, placing them under the direct pressure and influence of the revolutionary populace. Following these events, Maximilien Robespierre moved into an apartment at 30 Rue de Saint-Onge in Le Marais, a relatively affluent district. He shared his third-floor apartment with Pierre Vidier, his secretary at the time. Robespierre soon became a key member of the newly formed Society of the Friends of the Constitution, commonly known as the Jacobin Club. Initially an exclusive group of deputies from Brittany, the Jacobin Club opened its doors to non-deputies after the assembly moved to Paris, growing to a membership of about 1,200. Robespierre quickly found a receptive audience here. The cornerstone of Jacobin ideology was equality before the law. Robespierre was particularly vocal against property qualifications for voting and holding office under the proposed constitution. On October 22nd, he passionately argued that sovereignty resided in the people, and every individual had the right to participate in lawmaking and public administration. He emphasized this stance again on January 25, 1790, stating bluntly that all Frenchmen should have equal access to public positions, based solely on their skills and talents. His influence grew within the assembly. On March 31, 1790, he was elected as president of the Jacobin Club. In the following months, he advocated for equal representation of officers and soldiers in court-martials and supported the cooperation of the National Guards across France. By June, he was elected secretary of the National Assembly and demanded equal salaries to promote fraternal equality. Throughout 1791, Robespierre remained a staunch defender of egalitarian principles. He was instrumental in pushing through a motion to prevent any deputy who served in the Constituent Assembly from sitting on the succeeding Legislative Assembly, aiming to block the ambitions of those favoring a constitutional monarchy. Robespierre's speeches and publications often focused on the principles of universal suffrage and the dangers of war. He warned that war could lead to dictatorship or restore royal power. His skepticism towards the war against Austria, declared in April 1792, underscored his belief that revolutionary changes should come from within, rather than being imposed by force abroad. In August 1792, Robespierre played a crucial role during the insurrection that led to the storming of the Tuileries Palace and the eventual suspension of King Louis XVI. He continued to champion the creation of a national convention to replace the assembly, insisting on universal male suffrage. The Prussian invasion in August led to further radical measures. The assembly ordered a citywide search for weapons and suspects, resulting in many arrests. Robespierre supported these actions, seeing them as necessary to defend the revolution from internal and external enemies. By September 1792, as the elections for the National Convention began, Robespierre's influence was evident. He was elected as a deputy, but the Montagnard Jacobins, including Robespierre, would gradually eliminate their opponents and dominate the convention. His steadfast adherence to revolutionary principles and his reputation for incorruptibility earned him great admiration among his peers. During the French Revolution, two prominent political factions emerged, the Girondins and the Jacobins. Both played crucial roles but had differing ideologies and approaches. Representing the more moderate faction, the Girondins advocated for a constitutional monarchy and were wary of the growing radicalism. They emphasized economic liberalism, supported provincial autonomy, and feared the influence of Parisian mobs on national politics. The Jacobins, on the other hand, led by Maximilien Robespierre, were known for their radical and egalitarian views. The Jacobins pushed for the complete abolition of the monarchy and the establishment of a republic. They were centralizers, advocating for a strong centralized government to enforce revolutionary changes and ensure equality. The Jacobins gained significant influence through their strong connections with the Parisian working class and their uncompromising stance on revolutionary principles. These ideological differences led to intense power struggles and ultimately shaped the course of the revolution. After the National Convention declared France a republic on the 21st of September 1792, a commission was formed to gather evidence against the former king, Louis XVI. Meanwhile, the convention's legislation committee explored the illegalities of conducting a trial. On November 20th, the discovery of a hidden stash of 726 documents revealed Louis's communications with bankers and ministers, turning public opinion sharply against him. Claude Bazire, a supporter of the revolutionary leader Danton, proposed that the National Convention itself should try Louis XVI. On the 28th of December, Robespierre reiterated his stance on the king's fate to the Jacobin Club, and by the 14th of January 1793, the convention unanimously found Louis guilty of conspiracy and attacks on public safety. The next day, a proposal for a public referendum on the king's fate was defeated by 424 votes to 287, with Robespierre leading the opposition. On the 16th of January, voting began to decide the king's sentence. Robespierre worked tirelessly to ensure Louis's execution, and the Jacobins succeeded in thwarting the Girondins' last plea for clemency. On the 20th of January, half of the deputies voted for immediate death, and the following day, Louis XVI was guillotined. With the king's execution, the radical Montagnards, included leaders like Robespierre and Danton, gained prominence, overshadowing the Girondins. This shift marked a significant escalation in the revolution's radical phase, leading to increased centralization and the establishment of the Reign of Terror. The French government faced major internal strife as provincial cities rebelled against the radical revolutionaries in Paris. Assassinations of Marat and Le Pelletier created fear among leaders like Robespierre. Corsica seceded, seeking British protection. In mid-1793, France nearly plunged into civil war, facing aristocratic uprisings and federalist revolts. Robespierre joined the Committee of the Public Safety in late July, marking a critical period. By August, the new French constitution faced resistance in rebellious cities. Robespierre's presidency saw the introduction of the levée en masse and severe measures against economic sabotage. September saw the establishment of a revolutionary army and strict price controls amid rising unrest. October brought a split in the convention, leading to the trial and execution of Girondins. The Committee of the Public Safety gained supreme power, but remained accountable to the convention. Robespierre's leadership saw harsh measures against perceived enemies, including the execution of Marie Antoinette. November was marked by further consolidation of power and suppression of opposition. In December, Robespierre clashed with de-Christianizers and critics like Camille Desmoulins. The law of revolutionary government centralized authority, leading to increased arrests and executions. Robespierre's report justified the need for terror as a tool of virtue and justice. Early 1794 saw the execution of Hébertistes and Dantonistes, as Robespierre targeted factions within the revolutionary government. The law of 22 Prairial in June expanded the Revolutionary Tribunal's powers, leading to a spike in executions. This period solidified the committee's control and intensified the reign of terror, emphasizing terror and virtue as foundations of revolutionary governance. During the Reign of Terror, approximately 17,000 people were executed, with thousands more imprisoned. Executions were often for crimes perceived as counter-revolutionary, including criticizing the government, hoarding goods, or merely being suspected of disloyalty. Fear permeated France, as the Revolutionary Tribunal frequently condemned individuals without substantial evidence. Displaying grief for an executed loved one was considered anti-revolutionary. In some instances, men were guillotined, followed moments later by their wives for weeping, equating their sorrow with opposition to the revolution and the people. This widespread fear and swift, severe punishment exemplified the period's harshness and paranoia. Robespierre's quest for revolutionary change extended beyond politics, targeting the Catholic Church and its policies, especially clerical celibacy. While he condemned the excesses of de-Christianization by his political adversaries, he sought to rejuvenate spirituality in France through deist beliefs. On May 6, 1794, Robespierre announced the Committee of Public Safety's recognition of the existence of God and the immortality of the human soul. The next day, he presented a detailed speech to the convention, intertwining religious and moral principles with republican ideals, and introducing festivals dedicated to the Supreme Being and other virtues. On June 8th, during the Festival of the Supreme Being, Robespierre made his public debut as a leader and convention president, passionately expressing his love for virtue, nature, and deist beliefs. At the Champ de Mars, he delivered speeches emphasizing a supreme being devoid of religious figures like Christ or Mohammed. This led to criticism, with some accusing him of aspiring to godhood and creating a new religion, particularly after allegations of involvement in Catherine Théot's prophecy conspiracy. The cult of the Supreme Being he championed aroused suspicion among anti-clericals and political factions, leading to doubts about his grasp on reality and contributing to his downfall. According to Madame de Staël, more popularly known as Anne-Louise Germaine Necker, prominent French-Swiss writer and daughter of Jacques Necker, a finance minister to Louis XVI, this period marked Robespierre's decline. In May and June 1794, tensions heightened in revolutionary France. On May 20th, Robespierre signed an arrest warrant for Theresa Cabarrus, and 3 days later, Cécile Renaud was arrested near his residence with 2 penknives, leading to her execution on June 17th. The law of 22 Prairial, introduced on June 10th without consulting the Committee of General Security, doubled the executions in Paris, marking the onset of the Great Terror, with 1,366 people executed between June 10th and July 27th. Robespierre accused his opponents like Fouché of conspiracy, and after facing opposition on June 12th through 13th, he withdrew from committee, signaling his declining influence. In July 1794, Robespierre's grip on power continued to slip. On July 1st, he addressed the Jacobin Club, denouncing slanders, and by July 3rd, he expressed his frustration at a committee meeting. His health deteriorated and his political rationality waned, leading to increased calls for purges. On July 26, he delivered a 2-hour speech at the convention, defending himself against the charges of dictatorship and warning of a conspiracy. However, his refusal to name the accused led to resistance and his speech not being printed. Later that evening, his speech at the Jacobin Club was well received, but it was clear his position was tenuous. On July 27th, Robespierre's fate was sealed as members of the two committees conspired against him, driven by fear and revenge. Tallien threatened the convention, resulting in Robespierre's arrest. That evening, Robespierre and his allies were taken to different prisons, but they were freed by their supporters. However, by nightfall, Robespierre and his followers were recaptured. Robespierre himself was injured while attempting suicide. On July 28th, Robespierre and 21 others were sentenced to death. They were executed at the Palais de la Révolution amidst a furious mob. Robespierre's execution marked the end of the Reign of Terror. His body, along with his associates, was buried in a mass grave, later transferred to the catacombs of Paris. Italy is renowned for its breathtaking beauty, rich culture, and storied history. From the ancient ruins of the Colosseum and the grandeur of St. Peter's Basilica to its world-class cuisine and artistic treasures, Italy is a destination that has captivated the hearts of travelers and historians alike. Despite its impressive heritage, Italy is relatively young, only unified in 1861. This is surprising given that Italy's history stretches back centuries, with the Etruscan civilization, the Roman Empire, and the papacy all leaving their mark on the country. Before its unification, Italy was a collection of separate states, with Austria and France exerting significant control over the region. However, the Risorgimento, the unification led by the legendary Giuseppe Garibaldi, united the country and forged Italy as we know it today. This remarkable history has profoundly impacted the world, shaping the course of politics, religion, and culture. Join us as we explore the fascinating story of Giuseppe Garibaldi, the charismatic leader who shaped modern Italy. Giuseppe Maria Garibaldi was an Italian general, patriot, revolutionary, and republican. He played a key role in the unification of Italy, a movement known as the Risorgimento, which led to the creation of the Kingdom of Italy. Garibaldi is celebrated as one of Italy's fathers of the fatherland, alongside Camillo Benso, Count of Cavour, Victor Emmanuel II of Italy, and Giuseppe Mazzini. Known as the Hero of Two Worlds, Garibaldi earned this title for his military campaigns in both South America and Europe. His adventurous spirit and dedication to freedom made him legendary in the fight for independence and unity. Giuseppe Maria Garibaldi, originally christened Joseph Marie Garibaldi, was born in Nice on July 4, 1807. At the time, Nice was part of the French Republic, as it had been conquered in 1792. Garibaldi's parents were Domenico Garibaldi from Chiavari and Maria Rosa Nicoletta Raimondi from Lona. In 1814, the Congress of Vienna returned Nice to Victor Emmanuel I of Sardinia, though it was later ceded back to France in 1860, despite Garibaldi's objections. Garibaldi grew up in a family involved in coastal trade, which sparked his interest in maritime life. From 1828 to 1832, he lived in the Pera district of Constantinople, where he worked as an instructor teaching Italian, French, and mathematics. In April 1833, Garibaldi sailed to Taganrog in the Russian Empire on the schooner Clorinda, transporting a shipment of oranges. During his 10-day stay in port, he met Giovanni Battista Cuneo, a politically active immigrant from Oneglia and a member of the secretive Young Italy movement led by Giuseppe Mazzini. The secret society aimed to unite Italy under the slogan, "One free, independent, Republican nation." Mazzini believed a popular uprising could unify Italy and spark a wave of revolutions across Europe. The group's motto was God and the People. Its core principle was the true Italian liberty could only be achieved by merging the various states and kingdoms into a single republic. The vision for the new nation was clear. It had to be one independent, free republic. Mazzini truly believed this and fervently advocated for the unification of Italy as a liberal republic through political and social reforms. Through Mazzini's advocacy, the first spark of the republicanism fire was ignited in young Giuseppe's heart. Just 7 months after being introduced to republicanism through the Young Italy movement, Garibaldi met Giuseppe Mazzini in Genoa in November 1833. This meeting marked the beginning of a long but eventually troubled relationship. Garibaldi joined the Carbonari, a revolutionary group, and in February 1834, he took part in a failed uprising in Piedmont led by Mazzini. After the failed insurrection in Piedmont, Garibaldi knew he had to leave Italy for a while. He first sailed to the Beylik of Tunis before eventually going to Brazil. Garibaldi's stay in South America was where his real genius and tact for war came on full display for the world to see. One could argue that his time in South America was meant to prepare him for the daunting tasks ahead. Once there, he joined the rebels known as the Ragamuffins in the Ragamuffin War of 1835. Supporting the Rio Grandense Republic's attempt to break away from Brazil. During this war, Garibaldi met Ana Maria de Jesus Ribeiro de Silva, better known as Anita. When the rebels declared the Catarinese Republic in Santa Catarina in 1839, Anita joined Garibaldi aboard his ship Rio Pardo and fought with him in Imbituda and Laguna. In 1841, Garibaldi and Anita moved to Montevideo, Uruguay, where Garibaldi worked as a trader and schoolmaster. They married the following year at the Church of St. Francis of Assisi in the Ciudad Vieja neighborhood and had 4 children, Domenico Menotti, Rosa, Teresa, Terista, and Ricciotti. Anita, a skilled horsewoman, is said to have introduced Garibaldi to the gaucho culture of Argentina, southern Brazil, and Uruguay. Around this time, he adopted his iconic attire of a red shirt, poncho, and sombrero, commonly worn by gauchos. In 1842, Garibaldi took command of the Uruguayan fleet and formed an Italian legion of soldiers, known as the Red Shirts, for the Uruguayan Civil War. Montevideo had a significant Italian population, which facilitated his recruitment efforts. Garibaldi allied with the Uruguayan Colorados, led by Fructuoso Rivera and Joaquin Suarez, who were supported by the Argentine Unitarian Party, as well as French and British forces against the Blancos, led by former Uruguayan President Manuel Oribe, and supported by Argentine federals under Juan Manuel de Rosas. The Italian Legion adopted a black flag symbolizing Italy in mourning, with a volcano representing the dormant power of their homeland. Although contemporary sources do not specifically mention the red shirts, popular history claims they first wore them in Uruguay. Sourced from a Montevideo factory that had intended to export them to Argentine slaughterhouses, these shirts became the symbol of Garibaldi and his followers. From 1842 to 1848, Garibaldi defended Montevideo against Oribe's forces. In 1845, he captured Colinia del Sacramento and Martin Garcia Island, leading infamous raids on Martin Garcia. During the Anglo-French blockade of the Rio de la Plata, Garibaldi narrowly escaped death after being defeated at the Battle of Costa Brava in August 1842, thanks to the mercy of Admiral William Brown. Brown famously stopped his men from pursuing Garibaldi, declaring, "Let him escape. That gringo is a brave man." In honor of the admiral, Garibaldi later named his grandson William. Garibaldi achieved victories in the Battle of Cerro and the Battle of San Antonio del Santo in 1846, using amphibious guerrilla tactics. Indeed, if his time in South America were a test to prepare him for the work ahead, Garibaldi would have passed with flying colors. Garibaldi returned to Italy during the revolutions of 1848 and became a key leader of the Action Party. He offered his services to Charles Albert of Sardinia, who had some liberal tendencies but was met with distrust and indifference. Rebuffed by the Piedmontese, Garibaldi and his followers moved into Lombardy to assist in the provisional government of Milan. which had risen against Austrian rule. During the First Italian War of Independence, Garibaldi led his legion to mirror victories in Luino and Marazzone. After the crushing defeat of the Piedmontese at the Battle of Novara on March 23, 1849, Garibaldi went to Rome to support the newly proclaimed Roman Republic in the Papal States. However, the Republic faced a threat from a French force sent by Louis Napoleon at Mazzini's urging. Garibaldi took command of Rome's defense. During the fighting near Velletri, his life was saved by Achille Cantoni. After Cantoni's death at the Battle of Mentana, Garibaldi honored him by writing the novel Cantoni the Volunteer. On April 30, 1849, Garibaldi's Republican army achieved a remarkable victory, defeating a much larger French force at the Porta San Pancrazio gate in Rome. However, French reinforcements soon arrived, and the siege of Rome began on June 1st. Despite the determined resistance of Garibaldi and his troops, the French prevailed on June 29th. The next day, the Roman assembly convened to decide their next move: surrender, continue street fighting, or retreat to the Apennine Mountains to carry on the resistance. Garibaldi, entering the chamber covered in blood, passionately argued for the third option, declaring, "Ovunque noi saremo sarà Roma." Wherever we go, that will be Rome. A truce was negotiated on July 1st through 2nd. Garibaldi withdrew from Rome with 4,000 troops, relinquishing his plan to spark a popular uprising against the Austrians in central Italy. On July 3rd, the French army entered Rome and restored the Holy See's temporal power. Garibaldi and his men, pursued by Austrian, French, Spanish, and Neapolitan forces, fled north to reach Venice, where resistance against the Austrian siege continued. After a grueling march, Garibaldi found temporary refuge in San Marino with just 250 loyal followers. Tragically, during the retreat, Anita, who was pregnant with their fifth child, contracted malaria and succumbed to the deadly disease near Camaccio. Garibaldi eventually made his way to Porto Venere near La Spezia. But the Piedmontese government forced him into exile again. He traveled to Tangier, where he stayed with Francesco Carpenetto, a wealthy Italian merchant. Carpenetto proposed financing a merchant ship for Garibaldi to command, allowing him to make a living while his political goals seemed out of reach. Garibaldi agreed and spent his 5-year exile traveling to places like New York, Staten Island, Peru, and London, where he received a hero's welcome at Tyneside in 1854. Garibaldi returned to Italy in 1854. With an inheritance from his brother's death, he bought half of the island of Caprera, north of Sardinia, and dedicated himself to farming. When the Second Italian War of Independence broke out in 1859, Garibaldi was appointed Major General and formed a volunteer unit called the Hunters of the Alps. Realizing that the Sardinian monarchy was the most effective force for uniting Italy, he abandoned Mazzini's republican ideals. Garibaldi and his volunteers won against the Austrians at Varese, Como, and other locations. However, Garibaldi was deeply upset when his hometown of Nice, Nizza in Italian, was ceded to France in exchange for military support. In April 1860, as a deputy for Nice in the Piedmontese parliament in Turin, he fiercely criticized Camillo Benzo, Count of Cavour, for surrendering the county of Nice to Emperor Napoleon III of France. In the following years, Garibaldi and other passionate Nizzardo Italians supported the Italian irredentism movement for his native city and backed Nissard Vespers riots in 1871. On January 24, 1860, Garibaldi married 18-year-old Giuseppina Raimondi. However, immediately after the wedding ceremony, she revealed that she was pregnant with another man's child, prompting Garibaldi to leave her the same day. In early April 1860, uprisings in Messina and Palermo in the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies presented Garibaldi a new opportunity. He assembled a group of volunteers known as the 1,000, or 1,000, popularly called the Red Shirts. On the evening of May 5th, they set sail from Quarto near Genoa, aboard 2 ships named Il Piemonte and Il Lombardo. They landed at Marsala on the westernmost point of Sicily on May 11th. Garibaldi quickly bolstered his army with local rebels and led 800 volunteers to a significant victory over an enemy force twice their size. at the Battle of Calatafimi on May 15th. In a bold move, he ordered an uphill bayonet charge, using the terraced landscape to shield his advancing men. While not as large as later clashes, this battle was crucial in establishing Garibaldi's authority on the island. History has it that during the fight, he turned to his lieutenant Nino Bixio and said, "Here we either make Italy or we die." After this success, Garibaldi declared himself dictator of Sicily in the name of Victor Emmanuel II of Italy. He then laid siege to Palermo, the island's capital, on May 27th. Although initially supported by many locals, their uprising was met with fierce resistance and bombardment from reinforcements. However, a British admiral intervened to broker a truce, leading to the surrender of the Neapolitan royal troops and warships, allowing Garibaldi's forces to take control of the city. Garibaldi marched north across the Strait of Messina, encountering more celebration than resistance. He entered Naples, the capital city, on September 7th by train. Despite this triumph, he faced a formidable challenge in defeating the Neapolitan army at the Battle of Volturno on September 30th. Though it was his largest battle, victory was ultimately secured with the arrival of the Royal Sardinian Army. As Garibaldi's successes grew, so too did uneasiness in Piedmont, particularly among Prime Minister Cavour. He feared that further revolutionary victories could provoke French intervention and jeopardize Piedmont's recent territorial gains. Garibaldi, who deeply distrusted Cavour, supported King Victor Emmanuel II, whom he admired for championing Italian independence. In a historic meeting with Victor Emmanuel at Teano on October 26, 1860, Garibaldi hailed him as King of Italy and rode into Naples at his side on November 7th. Despite his pivotal role, Garibaldi retired to his island refuge of Caprera, refusing any reward for his services. This marked the beginning of the end for the scattered Italian states and set the stage for the unification process the following year. In his later years, Garibaldi battled arthritis and was often bedridden. Despite his health struggles, he made trips to Calabria and Sicily. In 1880, he married Francesca Amorosino, with whom he had 3 children previously. Before the wedding, he made it clear that he was not a Catholic and expressed willingness to convert to Protestantism. Though he was raised in the Catholic faith, Garibaldi renounced Christianity toward the end of his life, becoming a deist and a supporter of Freemasonry. As his health declined, Garibaldi requested to have his bed moved so he could see the sea before he passed. When he died on June 2, 1882, at nearly 75 years old, his wish for a simple funeral and cremation was disregarded. Instead, he was buried on his farm on the island of Caprera, alongside his last wife with some of his children.